first one that came in was actually you've had a successful IMF program. Are you thinking of a follow-up one? And if so, what would be the objectives of a new agreement with the IMF?
What do you think? Do you want us to have another program? Our first program has achieved its objectives and more. Our government has been very happy with the first program, despite there was resistance at the beginning. And our government is eager to continue using the expertise of the IMF in one way or the other. And there are discussions going on about that. So this is my answer to your question.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And since we have lots of investors in the room, there's people asking about debt, and in particular, someone saying, so Egypt has made a lot of progress in terms of fiscal risk, but they wonder what your view is on the significant amount of short-term external debt Egypt has, and what the risks are in this respect.
Okay. We have very little short-term debt, so this information is not really accurate. Our long-term debt is over 87% of our external debt. The 13% portion of our short-term debt are predominantly deposits from Arab neighboring countries that have been with the central bank for the last 6 to 7 years, and they continue to be renewed. We don't perceive them as short-term as such. But even if you take this into account, our external debt is long-term, mostly bilateral loans, ECAs, and they range between 10 and 59 years long. For instance, our new underground projects, the new extensions, we have loans from Asia for 59 years. Our refinery projects, the expansions in 3 refineries, which is a major project, also has long-term loans. Our desalination plants and our fertilizer plants, they enjoy long-term financing. Our short-term loans are historic. Our short-term obligations were historical, and they were received a long time ago. Also, we've been able to tap the capital markets over the last 3 years, and we've done this very well. Our idea was that we prefer to extend the maturity of our debt. We've reached up to 30 years of maturity for our capital markets, and we've reduced the short-term exposure on the central bank and the government. So the capital market now has become a good investor opportunity, because our idea is that Egypt becomes a significant player in the capital markets. We want our issues to have depth and have more secondary market trading. So we continue to approach our capital markets as such. And our capital market issues were long-term. And for pricing, to us, it's very good. And I think of those issues are very close to FDIs, because even in FDIs, the IRR requested by investors is much higher. So I think we've done well on this front too. So I think our plan in terms of our external debt structure has been quite wise and conservative.
Thank you, Governor. And a question that is, I think, right up your alley. Someone's asking if you can say a few words about the inflation outlook in coming months, and how does monetary policy respond to that?
We have put our first inflation target that was for the last quarter of 2018 at 13%, and I think we've done a good job there. And though this was our first time for ourselves, We now have targets for ourselves, inflation to reach 9% plus or minus 3 towards the end of 2020. And I am sure that our monetary policy division will be able to achieve that.
Very good. And maybe from the remaining questions, let me select one that I think it's very linked to the type of issues we've discussed across regions, which is the growth question and what, from a more medium-term perspective, in your opinion, what are the main things Egypt should be looking into to make sure that the high growth rates you're seeing now really persist into the future and they become your potential growth?
Our upside, Egypt needs more hospitals. Egypt needs more schools. Egypt needs more products and industry, and the Egyptian economy is growing. So Egypt has a very substantial young population that can deliver and work. So the economy is witnessing a stage that's very different from many economies in the world today. So I can mention many industries, but at large, Egypt is in need to develop services industry, logistical industry, shipping and transshipment industries. Needs to develop extensions of petrochemical industries and make some backward integration and more forward integration for industry. We are looking at major petrochemical plant projects funded by investors internationally. So the government and the private sector are studying investments in various industries, and there is still a demand. And it's proven that there is a demand is that still our multinational companies and our domestic companies still find Egypt a preferred market to sell their products rather than to export. So we have General Motors and we have BMWs and we have the Mercedes. They prefer to sell the products domestically because still there is growing demand and there is ample room for the products.
Thank you. We have a bit of time left, and if you don't mind, I'll go back to a quite specific question that I think also comes from an audience that is very focused on fixed income. They want to know what your thoughts are on the high share of foreign ownership in the local bond market, which is something that we see across EMs, and would be very interesting to hear what you think in the case of Egypt.
The Ministry of Finance is coming with more issues in terms of long-term bond issues. And the foreign investors have been having more appetite into the 5-year and 10-year bond issues. I think the Ministry of Finance is happy with the levels of interest rate and will start doing more of long-term bond issues. Right now, some of our banks are very happy with their holdings and they don't want to give it up. But we are trying to deepen this market, and now with the levels of interest rate, there is more opportunity to convert part of the short-term treasury bills into longer-term bonds, and this will provide more opportunity for investors who want to lock their returns.
Perfect. Thank you, Governor. It's been an honor to have you here, and we hope to have you back in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm very